How's it going, guys? Parallax Abstraction here, and welcome to another Geek Bravado Ramble. It is Friday the 13th. That's right, it's Friday the 13th, isn't it? Yeah, it's Friday the 13th, 2014. I'm recording this at about 9:15 at night right now, anyway. Forgive me for probably looking a little bit more ragged than usual. I don't know why I haven't slept for crap the last week, maybe week and a half or so. Uh, yeah, I'm really beat and have to be up early tomorrow. One of my girlfriend's relatives is giving us they're moving and they have a large, practically unused bed that they can't take with them, and they're giving it to us. So I have to be up early to go and disassemble and transport that, which should be fun. But anyway, yeah. So still unemployed. Thought I'd be employed before now. I had a couple of opportunities that didn't work out, taking its toll on my mental state a little bit. But I'm waiting to hear from two other places, and one of them is better than the other. But the better one would also only be a 1-year contract job, which is not ideal, but it could be pretty neat. So I'm hoping something comes of that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And yeah. I guess another little bit of news that I haven't talked about a lot because it's not going to change a lot right now. But if you follow my media-specific Twitter feed, which is at PXA Media, which you should all be following if you are not and watching this, well, I got partnership for my channel. Hooray! Yeah, it's not a big deal yet, but I managed to attain partnership with a network called Creator X, which is a subnetwork of Fullscreen. Fullscreen is a humongous YouTube network, and Creator X is kind of their offshoot for emerging channels, basically. There's a lot of scummy networks out there, but Creator X actually has a very good reputation by and large. And yeah, I'm partnered with them. It's not going to change a lot. It's not going to change how the content I make. I'm just hoping by doing that will help drive some awareness and visibility to the channel a little bit. They have a really interesting suite of tools and community features and other things, which I actually haven't had time to dig into yet. I'm hoping to do that this weekend. And I'm hoping that by getting access to that stuff, it will help grow the channel a little bit. Technically, I get a better ad payout as well, but I mean, my entire channel has earned like $25 in the whole time I've been running it. So, and they don't even pay you until you hit 50. So, needless to say, it is not going to be solving my unemployment problem, but it's cool. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, Creator X has a good rep, so I'm looking forward to working with them and seeing what happens. So, yeah, watch this space. Some interesting stuff will happen. And the Tron 2.0 Retro Flashback Plays continues. There'll be another episode up tomorrow, so should be cool. Anywho, so what I'm just here to talk about is, here to talk about E3, honestly. I actually did one of these videos this morning, and it was really, really long. It was almost 40 minutes. And it was me mostly. I talked a lot about specific games and that, and then I realized that was kind of pointless. We actually recorded an episode of the Ramble cast last night that I'm not sure when Chris is going to get it up, but it was him, me, and Chris Woodward, and we had a big discussion about. We drilled down to games that we're looking forward to and things like that. So if you want to hear about that stuff, go check that episode out when it goes up. But I figured I'd redo this and just talk about E3 from more of a broader perspective, sort of a top-down overview of what I took away from it this year. It was an interesting show. One of the nice benefits, I guess, of being unemployed is the fact that I was able to watch all the press conferences live. I watched most of Giant Bomb's after hours shows live. Giant Bomb was basically the only place I got any info from over E3. I ignored almost every other outlet, and I learned everything I needed to learn from their discussions, in my opinion. And it was interesting. There was a lot, not just from them, but in general, it seemed to be a lot of cynicism going into E3. The last few years, I've noticed that the games press seems to be at their most cynical right before E3. They always are about, is there any creativity left in AAA games? Is the console industry doomed? Is the AAA industry doomed? Is this and that and the other thing that, because negativity drives hits. And they always seem to get a bit of a bump in morale or whatever you want to call it after E3. And that seems to have been the case again. But at least in the case of a lot of the places that I follow, it seems to have been, it's weird because it seems to have been that there has been a bigger boost in morale. Like people found a lot more to be excited about. And at the same time, the whole thing about questioning the relevance of E3 seems to still be a strong sentiment, but in a different way. A while back, it was either before last year's E3 or the one before, I wrote a ranting blog post about these people. The clickbait du jour of that time was, is E3 relevant anymore? Should E3 go away? And it was mostly a bunch of people who were writing in the context of, is E3 relevant anymore? Because at that time, that was when the, consoles are dying and we're all going to be playing games on tablets in a year mentality was going around. A mentality which seems to have shrunk a lot as these new machines came out and are apparently, from what I can tell, doing better than the machines of the previous generation did at this point in their lives. Go figure. But there's a different sentiment this time, and to be honest with you, I kind of understand it. And this came from the fact of what Nintendo did, interestingly enough. Nintendo, starting last year and continuing this year, rather than do a big glitzy press conference like Sony, Microsoft, EA, and Ubisoft did, they did their stream thing, their Nintendo Direct thing, and then their Treehouse live streams throughout all of E3. I actually only saw Nintendo's big sort of press event live stream. I missed all the Treehouse stuff, but from what I understood, it was pretty good. And the last year, the sentiment amongst everybody was that this was a sign of, Nintendo, this is just a sign of Nintendo's continuing doom. And, they're doing this because they can't afford it anymore. Never mind that they could apparently, they are apparently so wealthy. I heard that they could continue to report the losses they're reporting now for the next 40 years before they ran out of cash, which is kind of insane. But apparently, people were using it as that. But this year I noticed a lot of people, I heard it first from Jeff Gerstmann, but a lot of other people were saying it, that maybe Nintendo, which is normally a very conservative, very slow moving company, actually maybe has gotten out on the ahead of the curve on something. And the reason people are now saying that E3 might be losing relevance to a certain degree is that the larger elements of the big video game industry, so the AAA publishers that are left, the hardware makers, things like that, are in a position now, because of this socially connected world, where they are much more easily able to talk directly to their fans than ever before. A few years ago, we didn't have, just a couple of years ago, live streaming wasn't really a viable thing. And now Nintendo can speak directly to their audience and the press and the industry, including buyers and whatnot, at the same time. And they're able to do it with a pre-recorded presentation, so they don't have to worry about live technical flubs or executives tripping over their words or embarrassing stage presentations or whatever, because everything is very carefully choreographed. They get to put it out. They reach everyone at once. It probably costs a tenth of what, those big press conferences cost millions of dollars to put on. I bet it cost Nintendo a tenth to put together their live presentation. And they get the message out, they get people excited, they get to show a lot of the same stuff they show in the press conferences, like trailers, and they get to have their explanations and blah, 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 blah. But it's all done a lot less, and they get to do it on their own schedule. They did it around E3, but Nintendo has been doing those Nintendo Direct live shows for a while now, and they do them throughout the year. And they do it to sort of drip feed announcements and things like that, rather than front-loading them all into one show. And Jeff Gerstmann was saying, this is something that companies of even relatively small size can do. Indies have been doing the same thing to a lesser degree. And he was like, I'm wondering, he pondered whether or not this is maybe where the whole thing is going. And then eventually they're not going to need E3 because they're going to be able to have smaller events potentially for press where they'll demo things or whatever. Or because of digital distribution, they could post an early build of a game for the press to play and just yank it away afterwards because it's not on a disc. It's something they can have control over. And these things are a lot cheaper than running big booths. An interesting theme this year at E3 was that there was a couple of large companies like Konami and Capcom and Square that had these booths that took up the same amount of floor space that they used to, but they had nothing in them because they have no games to show right now. So like Konami's booth, I remember they showed a photo of it. It was just this big empty space with a tiny little demo theater in it. Apparently Capcom and Square were the same because they had nothing to show, but they have to rent that same amount of real estate because if they don't, they'll lose it in the future. The same reason why apparently EA's press conference, despite being pretty damn embarrassing with almost nothing to show of value in it, they held it anyway because if they bow out, they may not get to do it again. And things like that, which is an utterly ridiculous thing. And I mean, how many millions of dollars are being wasted on stuff like that is, increasing the budgets of these companies. And they don't have to do that when they do it in this other fashion where they talk directly to the consumers. And I think there's merit in that. I do wonder if that's where things are going. And I wouldn't mind that, to be honest with you. I like the spectacle of E3. I know it's a big, huge marketing machine, but you know what? I really like video games, and you know what you get during E3 week? A whole lot of talk about video games, and that's pretty good to me. I don't really care if it's marketing or not. It's only a cynical marketing measure. Like, marketing only works when you don't know you're being marketed to, and that's the thing. I know I'm being marketed to, and I don't care. I take from it what I want. I don't drink the Kool-Aid. I see what I see, and I get interested in what I get interested in. And if you're cognizant of that, then it's already failing as a purely cynical marketing event. Now, that's not going to stop people who need to constantly show their disdain for anything AAA from taking the piss out of this show, and the people who consume it, even when they insist they're not doing that, looking at you, Idle Thumbs and Jim Sterling, they say if you like E3, that's fine. This is the industry, not you, that I'm taking the piss out of. Well, no, if you're taking the piss out of E3, then you're really kind of taking the piss out of the people who enjoy it as well. And you know what? This is a place where a lot of video games are talked about, and if you don't have to be there, but if you're going to just spend the entirety of E3 snarking at it, I kind of think maybe you need to find another hobby and another thing to write about for a living, because this is where a lot of very passionate video game fans take a lot away from this. And if the only thing you can take away from it is the ability to sneer at your audience, you're kind of doing it wrong. Just saying. But yeah, if E3 in its current form went away and became and everything became a bit more directed, I'd be cool with that. I think it'd be an interesting thing. But you know what's also interesting, unrelated to that, is I've noticed, I've been following E3 long enough to notice that every year there always seems to be these broader themes involved in it. And you may recall, if you look at my post that I wrote about E3 last year, that I noted that other than the launch of new hardware, which was obviously a big overwhelming thing, but that's kind of different. That's kind of its own thing. If you notice that what I talked about with last year's E3 was that there was two really big themes that everybody seemed to be pushing, both the hardware makers and the software makers. And those two themes were that everything had become an open world. How many trailers did you see last year where they're showing a little thing going on, and then at the end it ends with the big pullout, and all of a sudden they're like, look, you're one of a million people in this world doing all this stuff, and isn't that crazy and amazing and huge entertainment freedom, etc., etc. Everything was that last year. And I definitely will say there's a lot less of that this year. I saw a lot more stuff being advertised this year that was much more focused around either smaller multiplayer experiences, we're talking 8 or less people at once, or single player experiences. Not everything is a big open world pseudo MMO, with the exception of something like Destiny, which nobody really knew what that was until just recently. and that looks like it's basically going to be an MMO of sorts, which is cool. There seems to be a lot less of that. Like we still got our big open world games. Like we got Watch Dogs, which is already out. The Crew still looks like it's going to be a big open world game. The Division kind of looks like that, though they seem to be paring that down a little bit and focusing more on sort of small group experiences within that game. And then they also, at Ubisoft anyway, they showed the new Rainbow Six, which is a small team game, not a big open world at all, which is rather interesting. I like big open world stuff, but I do agree that you can get saturated to a point with that. And it looks like people are starting to back off and realizing that smaller, more focused stuff, that's still big, but not that big, is still really popular, which is interesting. The other theme that I noticed that has changed a lot is, man, and this, I kind of feel smugly good about this because I believe it was in my bold predictions for this year, but if not, it is something I did think would happen. Remember last year how it seemed every big game from every big company was pitching the second screen experience, by which the games all had to interact with your smartphone or tablet in some way. And a lot of it was like, for example, in the Division, they were like, oh, you're going to be able to fly the drone in your buddy's game from your iPad when you're sitting on the train in your commute every day. And the idea behind it was like, oh, this is, we want to keep these people engaged with this game every hour of every day, every bloody second. And the idea was that they were going to tie you in with these smaller experiences. And I said, I said it was a dumb idea and a waste of time and money because big hardcore gamers who own next-gen consoles and are paying $60 for these games want to play the main game. They don't want to play some stupid little table scrap of a side game on their tablet on the bus. They're going to want to play the main thing. And casual players, people who aren't super hardcore into this stuff aren't going to do that, because if they're playing on the tablet on a commute, they're probably playing friggin' Candy Crush or something like that. They're not playing something related to a hardcore AAA like post-apocalypse survival thing like The Division. And it would appear I was right, because nobody was talking about that this year. In one of the gameplay demos of The Division, it was sort of listing the players along the bottom of the screen, and it showed one of them as being like, Joe is on a tablet. And that was it. They didn't show a guy on stage with it, and they could have. They didn't cut away to showing a guy doing it. They didn't even talk about it. Like, they acknowledged that it still existed, and that was it. And I think that says a lot. As I understand it, Watch Dogs had some major tablet integration or whatever, and I have not heard a word uttered in reviews or podcasts or anything else about that. I said hardcore gamers who are buying most of these games weren't going to care about that stuff, and I think I was right. It looks like nobody does care. Microsoft didn't talk about smart glass at all this year. Sony didn't talk about tablet stuff at all. So I think the industry tried to dive in with that and then very quickly learned that nobody gave a shit. So I found that it's very interesting how quickly they backed off and just kind of are like pretending that didn't happen. Everything that had that integration still does. Like the Crew has a companion app. I know Watch Dogs still does. The Division still does. So those features will be there. I don't think anybody's going to care when those games come out, but it's interesting. And the other thing that I took away is that I've seen a lot of the people out there cynically saying, oh, well, what was the point of this E3? Because everything they talked about is not coming out till next year anyway. To a certain degree, I can kind of empathize with that point of view. A lot of big stuff that a lot of people were looking forward to has been delayed. To be honest, I have such a big pile of backlog I want to attack this year. I kind of don't care, because it's gonna give me more time to deal with that. But I do think there was a lot of stuff delayed, but there's also some pretty amazing stuff that is still coming this year. We're getting Destiny this year. We're getting a co-op Assassin's Creed game, and I'll get to that after. We're getting that. We are getting a lot of the same franchises, but there is new stuff coming this year too, which I think is stuff to be excited about. And frankly, what's coming next year is going to be a big deal. And I've always said I would rather they wait and get it right than get it out sooner and have it be subpar. And I'm sure the hardware makers don't care for that. The Xbox One and PS4 were doing very well, but their sales have slid a lot because there's not a lot of software for them right now. But I still would rather wait for that stuff. And I mean, yeah, on the subject of hardware, I mean, I own a PS4. I bought one just before I got laid off, and Sony has made me glad I have it. If I didn't own one yet, I probably wouldn't have bought it yet, because of so much. But because there's a lot that's coming that I want, but none of it's here yet, and none of it will be here for a while. But I think I think there's a lot coming for that system that makes a very compelling case for it. Similarly with the Xbox One, they have sold me one eventually. I don't own one yet. Even if I could afford it, I wouldn't be buying it right now. But they've shown me enough that I am really stoked about, that I will definitely buy one. It's a shame because so much of what they showed on the Xbox One looks like great co-op stuff, but the guys I regularly play co-op games with have gone full PC, and they've basically said that they're not buying consoles this time around, which is kind of a bummer. I'll have to find maybe some other people to do that with. So and I got a Wii U almost at launch. I got one for Christmas the year it launched, and I've been as bummed as anybody else that there hasn't been much to play on it. But you know what? Good on Nintendo. The Wii U is selling worse than the Dreamcast. It is a failure of catastrophic proportions at this point. And the 3DS is doing really well. Nintendo could have just quietly ignored the Wii U, kind of like Sony's doing with the Vita, and said, yeah, here's a whole bunch of 3DS stuff. You know, this thing we got over here that's actually succeeding. Let's just dig into that and get and drive that, because that's what's keeping our company afloat. They didn't do that. There was a couple of 3DS announcements this week, but their entire main live event was just Wii U game after Wii U game after Wii U game. And they were just like, no, we're doubling down on this system because it can still succeed. We're going to show you how we're going to make you want one. And they know that it's not going to succeed like the Wii will, but they don't care because they know that you can still turn a profit in third place. They did it with the GameCube, and they can definitely do it again. And again, most of the stuff on the Wii U that I really want is not coming anytime soon, but it's coming. And I'm glad I got the thing under my TV ready for it. And we have some stuff now that's really good. Mario Kart 8 is awesome. So I'm happy about that. And I'm just happy in general that all three of the hardware companies, for the most part, understood that standing on stage with pie charts and media crap unrelated to games at E3 is a stupid thing to do. Microsoft was just game. Nintendo was game. Sony was a lot of games, followed by a little bit of pie charts and a big, droning, boring-ass media thing in the middle. But for the most part, they landed it too. And I mean, Sony to overcome the curb stomping they gave Microsoft last year, I mean, that's unattainable. There's nothing Sony could have done this year that would have topped that. But they did really well, I think. And these companies have all realized that games are what you should be talking about at E3. And I'm glad they did that. They got a lot of stuff going on. And can I just say that it is so refreshing to see executives from all sides act like bloody human beings for once and act like they actually like what they do for a living. It's been amazing. Like, they had the head of Xbox and Shuhei Yoshida, the head of Worldwide Studios for Sony, on Giant Bomb's After Hours show, not at the same time, but they were both there. And this is not a carefully choreographed, PR-handled thing. This is, a show where everyone is half drunk, exhausted, and just sits and shoots the shit about games in a completely unscripted manner. And they had these high-level multimillionaire executives sitting in there and just talking games with people. And yeah, Phil Spencer from Microsoft was a little handled, you could tell, and he was a little on message. But he really came across like, people are saying that they're encouraged since he took over Xbox, because he really seems to be a guy who cares about games, and that's what they really need. Unlike Don Matrick, who is just killing it at Zynga, I see. And it's really nice just to see him sit there and say, like, he spent half of his time talking with them about all the amazing stuff he saw from Nintendo, a competitor. And Shu Yoshida was just super casual. You know, he went in there making fun of Broforce, calling himself Brohei Broshida. And it was just so refreshing to see that. And then they didn't get anyone from Nintendo in there, but Nintendo had friggin' Fizeme and Iwata have like a crazy like Matrix style Smash Brothers fight during their video. And there's that photo that's going around on Twitter that I will put in the blog post, that amazing photo of Miyamoto demoing Mario Maker to a couple of kids, and everybody has a huge grin on their face and is just like just so happy there. And he's, you know, this big guy from Nintendo who doesn't need to sit anywhere near the public to be considered a friggin' hero is out there showing people. He's like, look, let me show you this cool thing, and it's awesome. And that's just so great. And the business world needs more people like that. People who are willing to get out and just talk to people like people, to not act like stuffed shirts, to act like real human beings who care about what they do. And people remember that. People are going to be talking about this. People are going to be talking about Shu Yoshida being on Giant Bomb After Hours thing. And it costs nothing for them to do. And it makes such an impression on people. The business world really needs to get over itself as a whole and learn from this. It's so great to see that. And I really hope they do more of that. I think that was really a really cool thing to see this year, that just everybody's getting out of their shells and just saying, you know what, we're gamers too, so let's just talk to you like you're friggin' gamers, because that's what we are. It's great. And of course, it wouldn't be another week in video games without a friggin' overblown controversy going on. And you know what, I'm not going to talk about that a lot, to be honest with you. There are valid points on both sides of this Ubisoft Assassin's Creed Unity thing. They don't come out smelling roses for sure. Ubisoft's response to the controversy was about as boneheaded as the way Nintendo initially responded to the Tomodachi Life thing a few weeks ago. They sounded completely tone deaf in the way they addressed it, and it was really stupid of them. At the same time, people are... all the examples you could have picked of poor female representation in video games, God knows there's a lot of examples you could choose from, and you choose to attack the company and series that has had an entire entry in its series with a black female hero protagonist, an entry which, by the way, nobody bought, which is a damn shame, because Assassin's Creed Liberation was actually really good, and nobody bought it, and the main DLC for the Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag was based around playing a black man trying to overcome and overthrow slavery. Ubisoft is far from perfect, but of all the big AAA publishers, they are probably the most representative of diversity in this industry. And no, they're not perfect. Yes, they could be better. Yes, they absolutely could have handled this situation better. But this went from something being pointed out that was a valid point to make, to a couple of press outlets who are rather famous for this, that I am not naming because they don't deserve the credit, spinning this out of proportion, creating a massive hornet's nest out of it, and it very quickly morphed into people screaming that Ubisoft hates women. And when you get that militant about something like that, all you do is alienate people and push people away from taking your side. This is not how you're going to solve the problem. It is a problem that needs solving. It is a problem that should be talked about, but instantly going to war over it, especially with the track record of the target that they picked, and with so many other better examples of the problem out there, you're going to entrench people even further. You're not going to convert anyone to your side with that type of mentality. And it's not the way to handle it. It's a bad way to handle it. And I think the best perspective to take on this is Aisha Tyler, who has been the host of the Ubisoft press conference for the last couple of years, and is a massive hardcore gamer and a champion for the underrepresented in video games. And she actually hadn't put this up this morning. I just read it this evening, but I'll link to it in the blog post and in the description. She put a very fantastic post on Facebook talking about more or less what I just said, but saying it much better, that there is a problem that needs to be solving, but the way people handled it this week is is not how you're going to solve the problem in an equitable manner. You should go read that, because she's better at it than I am. And once again, that lady proves herself to just be a friggin' amazing person. When I read her post and wanted to find a way to high five her, because she's really awesome. That's really all I got to say about it. Once again, simply having a middling opinion that is not wholly on one side or the other is probably going to get me vilified, and I don't care, because I don't think in binary. So that's too bad. So yeah, but as a whole, I think some of the questions about the reframing of the relevance question of E3 is an interesting one. But I'll tell you what, I came away excited about a lot of games this year. Yeah, there was not necessarily a lot of gameplay shown at E3 this year. The thing that I really find annoying about these people who've been snarky all week is the fact that they think that because E3 had a lot of CG trailers, that anyone who says, "Hey, I'm interested in that game," or "I'm excited about that game," has been sold, has been sold snake oil, and they're like, "Oh, good, you're going to go buy this game because of a CG trailer." No, I saw a bunch of CG trailers and I got interested in a game. I want to see more. I want to see live gameplay footage first. And if it turns out they can't deliver that before it comes out, then I still won't buy it. I'm not the kind of idiot marketing drone you like to cynically think I am, Jim Sterling. I am a person who can think for myself, but I like the concept around some of what I saw. The Order 1886, for example, is a game that I got to see a lot more playable of that game, and I've got to see that it's not just another dumb cover shooter. But the fact that a lot of what they showed, or actually a better example, is Bloodborne, which is a game that did not show any gameplay whatsoever, but has an incredible pedigree behind it and looks to be the successor to the Dark Souls series. Yeah, all I saw was CG, but you know what? I'm excited about the game. I'll have to see more before I put my money down for it, but they've got me interested. And that's the whole point, is to get you interested. The fact that all it was CG doesn't mean the game is going to be bad. And if you think that everyone who saw a CG trailer and went, "That looks cool," is going to run out and just buy the game right away, then you're just a fucking idiot. And anyone who thinks that way is just trolling. And no, sorry, I have no patience for that. But I'll tell you what, so in Canada, Best Buy Canada and Future Shop, which is a Best Buy company, every year have this, for the last few years, have had this big sale thing during E3. You can pre-order any game that is announced or talked about at E3, and if you pre-order 3 or more, you get $20 off each game. And the thing that's great about it is that once you've placed the order, you can cancel anything later on that you don't want or find out you're not interested in. Or when it ships, return it if it's unopened, get your money back, and it doesn't affect the discount on anything else. Once the order's locked in, the discounts are permanent. So what I always do with this sale every year is I pre-order every single game I could possibly have the slightest interest in, and I end up canceling or returning about half to 2/3 of them, and then I keep the rest, but everything I get for a substantial discount, I get on day one for basically the 6-month-old price, which is always really cool. And last year, I pre-ordered, I think it was probably 10 to 15 games. A couple of them have still not shipped yet, like Destiny was among those. The new Yoshi Yarn game, or Wool game, was among those. That stuff hasn't come out yet. But this year, no word of a lie, even if you exclude the game I pre-ordered both the PC and console versions of to hedge my bets on porting quality, even if you take those out, I pre-ordered, I believe it was 23 games this year. And of course, I probably won't keep all of those in the end. But there were more games I was interested in enough to lock in for, because I don't pay for them until they ship, right? I haven't put any actual money in yet. But there were more games I was interested in this year that I was willing to lock into early on than there was in the previous year by a substantial margin. And I think that says a lot. I obviously don't speak for everybody. I'm obviously one of the people who unashamedly admits that I still love a lot of AAA games. I love a lot of AAA series that many people think have completely lost any innovation at all. Not true. And AAA games are still my favorite type of games. I'm looking at my Steam list. I see indies for days on here, and I like a lot of them, but I like big, high production value stuff. And it's a great year to be a gamer of any stripe. There was a ton of cool indies at E3 in addition to this, but if you're into AAA, there is still a lot left. Even though that industry is shrinking, there's less people making those games, less people publishing them than ever before. There's still a lot of cool stuff coming, and the people who are left making them are really into it. And I think there's cool stuff coming. So there's a lot of interesting questions that came out of E3 this year. This is clearly an industry that's still trying to figure out how it wants to approach this generation with things like the lack of second screen stuff this year and open world stuff and all that other jazz. But progress is being made, I think, and a lot is being. I think there's a lot out there. There's a lot of options. It's a very good time to like video games. There's a lot of choice out there. It is not just explosion-ridden first-person shooters. There's a lot more to it than that. All you got to do is look for more than 5 seconds before writing it off to know that there's a lot out there, and there's something for people who like almost any kind of game. And I think that's really good. And I hope the industry is rewarded for it. I hope these games continue to sell, because if they don't, there's just going to be less of it, as it was loosely demonstrated by the fact, with Assassin's Creed Liberation. If you want to see change happen, then you have to support it when it does happen. Whether it's to see different kinds of elements in games or different types of games come out, if somebody takes a risk and they aren't rewarded for it, then they're not going to continue to take that risk. And people can't scream they want innovation and then just buy Call of Duty and Madden again. That's not how this works. This is an industry that has to make money like any other, and I hope people step up and reward what they saw this year if they liked it. I'm going to, but were it only possible for me to sustain video games by myself. Oh, well. But we'll see what happens anyway. So, but it was a good E3, but there was some interesting things that changed this year. And I thought it'd be more fun to talk about that than just drill on about specific games that I liked. Like I said, you can listen to the Ramblecast if you want to know more about that. So, but yeah, that's going to do it, I guess. Thank you guys for watching. As usual, if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Doing those two things helps me out a great deal, helps get the channel noticed a little bit more. And there's going to be more content coming soon. I'm going to keep doing retro flashback plays. I'm hoping to be doing some more normal retro flashbacks as well, and some other stuff in the coming weeks. Hopefully I can find employment soon, so I would actually be perfectly fine with not having as much free time as I have now. But we'll see what happens with that anyway. But yeah, this will probably go up over the weekend along with the blog post itself. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But enjoy gaming, guys. It's a good time for it. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.